If you've always wondered, how do I know if it's my ego or if it is spirit? How do I trust that it's real? Then this video is for you. I sent out an email and so many people replied back saying, I need help with this. This is a really common struggle that people come to me with when they're trying to understand the messages coming in for themselves. I often find that it is way easier to give messages to other people than it is to receive intuitive messages for ourselves. And that's because other people's energy are different. And so when the messages come through, we recognize its distinction versus when we receive them for ourselves, it's coming through our intuition for us, which is our own energy. And it oftentimes gets a little muddled. So I'm going to give you some easy steps to help you with learning when it is intuitive and when it is not. So, the first question I would ask you, are you regularly talking to your spirit guides and taking part in intuitive exercises to really open your intuition? And if your answer is no, Whitney, I just let answers come to me in the moment and I just figure, just give me the message when I need to know it. I'm going to tell you, as a medium and a teacher, we've got to change that. If you are in the middle of your day and you're exercising, if you are at the grocery store, whatever you're doing, your brain has to be somewhat engaged. So when your spirit guides give you a message in the middle of that, it's going to lead to more confusion because you're over here thinking about, the soup that you want to buy for dinner, and then spirit's trying to give you a message at the same time, and you're going to be like, wait a minute. Was that me just thinking about soup and then I was just kind of thinking about this other thing? Or was that an intuitive message? Of course, you're going to be confused. So, what you need to do is take some time in your day, 5 to 15 minutes each day, and talk to your spirit guides. You can talk to them before bed, talk to them when you wake up, or attach this conversation and these exercises to any kind of consistent activity that you do each day. It could be after you brush your teeth, after you drink your coffee, after you take your afternoon nap, whatever that looks like for you. But during that time, you want to clear your mind and receive. Now, the next tip that I want to share is that when people try to do these exercises, oftentimes they're doing an exercise that doesn't really work for them. And then that's a problem. If it doesn't work for you, it's not going to work for you. There are many different ways we can receive intuitive information from our spirit guides. And the way that I teach inside of my course for intuitive languages, I say you can be a seer, which that means you receive information through clear sight or through clairvoyance. You can be an owl, so that means you would hear through clairaudience. You can be an empath, which means you will receive information through feeling. Or you can be a channeler, meaning your information will come through your body. And the channeler is the one where so many people are like, what? I didn't know that was intuition. Yes, it is. So you have to do an exercise that really corresponds to the way that you're getting messages. You will want to call in your spirit guides. You will want to let them know that you're going to be clearing your mind. And then you're going to be asking the questions and paying attention to how it comes in for you. But I'm going to back up for just a moment. Before you do any of these exercises, you need to give your ego, your mind that wants to control things, permission to just relax and release. A lot of times when we try to do intuitive exercises, we start worrying about paying the bills, or, oh my gosh, I forgot to reply to Susie about dinner, or, oh my gosh, I forgot to do my laundry. Give your mind permission. One of the best ways to do this is to write down all the worries of all the things and just kind of let your mind relax. You can even say, if anything comes up during these intuitive exercises, I promise I will get back to you, mind, and we will handle these things later. But it's nice if you write them down ahead of time so that you feel like you can relax a little bit more. When clearing your mind, You can literally tell your mind, hey, I'm going to leave you at the door, but I promise that I will come pick you back up after this exercise is over. So imagine that you're talking to your mind like you would a child and you're dropping them off for daycare for a little bit, and then you can pick your child back up from daycare. So that can be really helpful. However, let's talk about clearing the mind. There are many different ways to do it, but you want to pick a way that really works for your intuitive language, whether you see, hear, feel, or know the message is coming through from spirit. And if you don't know the way that it comes through, I can give you an exercise that will encompass all the different languages, but you might also want to take my free quiz to find what yours is. So, one of my favorite exercises is to close your eyes and imagine a dry erase board. And all that's on that dry erase board is a bunch of colors, a bunch of words, and you don't even have to know what these things are, but it just represents whatever's been on your mind. And so you don't have to see the words, it doesn't have to be all your worries. You just know that it's cluttered on this dry erase board. Close your eyes, breathe. You can even see my shoulders relax because many of us are like this. Okay, I'm relaxing. Get yourself in a nice, comfortable position. Breathe a couple deep breaths in and out. And then take your hand and start erasing anything that's been on this board. And then as you're doing that, I want you to see everything that's been on the board starting to go into a blank canvas. I want you to hear the sounds of the eraser on the board, clearing away all the stuff. I want you to feel a sense of peace because there's less clutter. And then just know that your mind is clear when all of this is complete. So this utilizes your hand doing this literally. And that is part of the channeler intuitive language because the channelers really use their body. You're feeling that peace, which really speaks to the empath. You are hearing the eraser, which speaks to the owl, and you're seeing it move into a blank status. And that is the seer. So now that you've done that, what I'd like for you to do is just ask your spirit guides any questions that you might want to know the answers to. Or you could just say, I'd love to know any messages that you have for me. And then just allow yourself to perceive what comes through. Generally speaking, when you're starting exercises like this, it can be really subtle. So pay attention to any subtleties and don't worry about knowing what these subtleties mean. Just bring your awareness to any shift in feeling, any shift in what you're hearing, seeing, or what you know to be true. So when you're receiving messages, if you are a seer, generally you will get images, colors, numbers, things of that sort. And so you could even ask your spirit guides, if this is a yes, I'd love to see a green light. You can ask your spirit guides, when you're telling me yes, please show me what that looks like. Now, if you are a clairaudient and you're an owl, you might hear a yes, and it can sound like your own inner reading voice. And this is where a lot of people get confused because they're like, I just made that up. It sounds like my own voice in my head. In fact, that is 90% of the time when we get intuitive messages, it will sound like our own inner reading voice. And only a small percentage will sound like a different person's voice. So make sure that you are allowing for any information to come through in that way. And the next piece of information I would say is if you're an empath, then you're going to feel. So say, Spirit, what does it feel like when you're telling me a yes or a no? And you might feel in your gut that it is a yes or this doesn't feel good if it's a no. And then if you are a channeler, that is something a little different. You can utilize different ways of doing this. One of the best ways is by writing. Get a pencil and a paper, more so a pencil than a pen, and just start writing the first thoughts that pop into your mind on the piece of paper. And don't even worry about writing correctly. It can just look like chicken scratch. Just write stuff down as they come. The other way that you can do this is ask your spirit guides, can you help move my body to where I know if it's a yes or a no, and see how your body responds. That's really what intuitive exercises look like. And then, of course, you're going to want to thank your guides after you have these kind of conversations. But what if you're still confused? Then I have some questions I want to ask you, and then only you are going to know the answers because you're going to reflect on these questions. If you could actually receive clear messages from your spirit guides, would you truly receive these messages and accept them into your heart? There's no judgment on the answer. It's just sometimes it's like a no. And if it's a no, then ask yourself why and dig a little deeper. If you receive these messages, would you actually take them as good, sound advice? Meaning, would you listen to them? Would you follow through on them? And if your answer is no, then really ask yourself why you might not do that. If you feel like you're stepping in your own way, really dive into why are you allowing yourself to block the messages from your guides? Like if you just know in your heart, you know, I just don't know if I really want to hear them. Like I say I do, but there's something in me that feels like it's trying to block them. Figure out where in your body it feels tight or you feel like there's tension or where you are blocking them in your energy. And then when you notice a different sensation in your body, speak to that part of your body and just say, why are you blocking me? And sometimes the answer is, I'm trying to protect you. And you can dive a little bit more into that as well. And then you could say, the protection isn't necessarily needed, but thank you so much for trying to have my back. If you feel like you're blocking the messages, you might also want to ask yourself, what am I trying to block? Like, what answer do I really just not want to know? I say I want to know it, but if it's a different answer than what I want it to be, maybe that's why you're blocking it. I also want you to dive into really learning if you trust yourself or not. Sometimes when you're not receiving messages from your spirit guides, it's because you aren't truly trusting your abilities. And that can also lead to you don't trust yourself in other areas of life too. So it could be some confidence that you need to work on and recognizing that you are a powerful person and that you have the abilities. You just need to step up and utilize them and have confidence in yourself. And I also want to ask you if you feel like you're too hard on yourself. I find a lot of people who have trouble really receiving the messages can be that they're too self critical, that they're always second guessing themselves and they're too hard on themselves. And that can lead to energetically blocking the messages. And then finally, I want to ask you, what do you have to lose? That can open up your intuition just thinking, yeah, why am I being so serious about this? Like, why am I being so hard on myself? Or why am I just resisting the message when receiving can be easy? And I just gave you a little hint there. Sometimes the message is, well, you might not receive. So if you're someone that has trouble receiving compliments, receiving when somebody tries to pay for your dinner, or you feel like you have to overgive, then that could be an issue with receiving messages, period, because your receiving feels hard. So, really paying attention to that. So, if you're interested in learning your intuitive language, you can find my quiz below. If you want more information on how to talk to your spirit guides and connect with them and communicate with them, you are invited to take my free spirit guide class. And if you're just like, Whitney, I know I want to work with you and I want to learn this whole system, then there's a link below to take my 4 intuitive languages program. Let me know how these tips go in the comments, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.